Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 London Spitfire preview. So, our inaugural season champions London Spitfire then. What an off-season it's been in London. Oh boy, this is going to be a long one. So, London Spitfire finished the inaugural season in 5th place, but they did go on to win the entire season, beating the Philadelphia Fusion in the grand finals. But in 2019, things didn't really go according to plan for the Spitfire in terms of trying to retain their title, as they finished 7th, just outside the automatic playoffs, which means they had to play through the play-ins. They did get through the play-ins after a close match against the Shanghai Dragons, but when they got to the playoffs, they ended up faltering, and they ended up faltering big time, failing to win a game, and they unceremoniously got knocked out 4-0 by the San Francisco Shock in the losers bracket. So, things really didn't go according to the plan for the London Spitfire, and yeah, they decided to act on that, and perhaps they acted on that a little bit too drastically in this off-season. So, let's take a look at the London Spitfire then. We have got a lot to get through. I'm actually going to start off with the coaches, because this is a major thing for the London Spitfire, right? So, there's actually, in the history of London Spitfire, been a lot of chop and change at the coaching roles. So, Coach H815 left in the middle of last year, and then Jay Phil has also now left his role as coach at the London Spitfire. He was part of the London Spitfire coaching team when they won the league. So, that was an interesting decision in itself. He's gone on to become an assistant coach at the Shanghai Dragons, which I think actually is a pretty good pickup for the Shanghai Dragons. But this has allowed the Spitfire, because they were already on a really small coaching roster, and I think this really hampered them during last season. So now this has allowed them to rework their entire coaching lineup. So they've brought in Twinkle as an assistant coach, who comes in from O2 Blast, a team that did very well in Korean Contenders at the start of last season, or last year I should say. Then they brought in Awesome Guy. Awesome Guy, you will know, who used to be a player for the Florida Mayhem. He went on to coach at the Florida Mayhem and then the Element Mystique Academy. Now, a lot of the players that were at the Element Mystique's Academy have been promoted to Element Mystique now. So clearly something was working with Awesome Guy. He's also known as SNT, if you didn't know. So Awesome Guy is a pretty good pickup. But what the major pickup in the coaching role for London Spitfire is Pavane. So Pavane caught a lot of people off guard. Pavane was, I believe, head coach at the NYXL. Pavane has been like a staple name of the NYXL's coaching staff actually in a lot of previous times. He was at LW Blue and LW Red before NYXL. But Pavane is a massive pickup for the London Spitfire, because obviously NYXL have done very well for the past 2 seasons. They may not have won the league, but they have done very well. And the main thing about Pavane is he is actually quite good friends with the new head coach of London Spitfire, who is Agape, the only remaining coach from London Spitfire's inaugural season win and last year. So Agape was promoted to head coach, and Agape and Pavane worked together during the LW days in 2016, so they know each other very well. And I think this really will benefit London. I think their coaching lineup actually this year is pretty darn good. And they've also got in Hoon Maru as an assistant manager as well, replacing Lil Susie, who obviously left quite a while ago, Susie Kim. So I think these are pretty good pickups in the coaching lineups for London. But this has also heralded a massive change in the roster. So they got rid of Birdring, who is now with the Los Angeles Gladiators, Nuss, who is unassigned, Guard, who retired, Prophet, Gesture, and Bedosen have all gone to the Soul Dynasty. Fury, the amazing off-tank player, has gone to the Philadelphia Fusion, and Quartermain has now become unassigned, leaving the London Spitfire. They have literally got rid of everyone apart from Krillin. This is a major move from the Spitfire. Now, will it backfire on the Spitfire? Who knows? We don't know what the terms of these guys leaving were. The Fury one is the one that finds me a bit odd. Now, Gesture and Prophet, I can understand. Maybe they got an offer from Soul. Soul have really wanted to have a blockbuster roster with the homestand format, because obviously they're the only team representing Korea. And if Gesture and Prophet wanted to represent their home team, what can London do? They don't want 2 unhappy players on their team. Because Prophet is literally a massive, massive loss for London Spitfire. One of the best players in the league. So I can't imagine they really wanted to get rid of him. I would imagine he wanted to go and play for his home team. So I can't really say it's a big loss. It is a big loss for London, but it's probably a loss they couldn't avoid. But some of the other losses, like Ousting and Fury, maybe they could have avoided those. Fury is the weird one. Like, I don't know why Fury would leave the London Spitfire to go to Philadelphia Fusion, unless he wanted to stay in America. But then again, he's not staying in LA, he's going to Philadelphia. So, and you're not really situated in these places too much because you're not spending too much time there because you're traveling. So, it's all very weird. But we have to talk about the team that London now has. Now, you will know, obviously, Krillin. Krillin is the only remaining player from that London Spitfire roster. He didn't feature all that much for London last season, but perhaps he was a sign of things to come, because he's certainly a development project for the London Spitfire, and he has stayed on for this season. He will be joined by the tank player, Banar. Banar comes from Fusion University, which is now known as T1 in South Korea, and he was actually he was part of the days of Fusion University when they used to dominate NA contenders. He is South Korean, don't get me wrong, this whole entire roster is South Korean, London Spitfire sticking with that. He's only 19, and he's an off-tank player who plays a Sigma, Roadhog, Zarya and D.Va. So this is the replacement for Fury. He has got some very, very big boots to fill. And only time will tell to know if Banar is going to be able to even remotely live up to what Fury was. He's got a very good track record in contenders, no one can argue with that, but yes, it'll be very interesting. But Banar is a decent signing, but it's very hard to tell where these players are going to sit in the league. Then we have the support player Fuse. Fuse also comes from the Fusion University. Again, would have played alongside Banar, so that's really good for synergy reasons. He is slightly different though, because he didn't play in that Fusion University team that did very well in NA contenders, because he's only played for that Fusion University team since they have been in Korea, which they did okay in, but were outclassed by Runaway eventually. Although he has been at Gen G, and he has been at MVP Space previously, and done decently there, so again, I can't really take too much away from him, but in Season 1 2019 with Gen G, he did do decently, only losing out to Element Mystique. So, moving on after that, and we have Shui. Shui is an interesting one. Shui is ex-Runaway, and a DPS player who's known for his projectile play. Shui was very good when he used to play for Runaway. Runaway, obviously, we all know about their track record. He has won countless tournaments with Runaway, and Shui is arguably going to be one of the marquee players for this new London lineup. He should be really good, and it'll be interesting to see how London decide to try and get the best out of him. He is still only 18, and he's been out of the loop for a couple of months, but I think this is actually a really good signing for the London Spitfire. And hey, no one on the market right now can match what profit is that London would have been able to attain. So yeah, I think this is a good move for London if they're going to lose profit. Next up, we have the main tank that's probably going to roll out most of the time for the London Spitfire now, and this is JMac. JMac is an interesting pick because JMac comes from LG Huya. Now, LG Huya is the academy team of Chengdu Hunters in Contenders China. Remember, JMac is still Korean though. Now, JMac, what I like about JMac is he's good on pretty much every main tank. Apart from, don't know really what his Hammond's play like, but we'll get to that in a minute because London have got an answer to that. But LG Huya have done very, very well in Chinese contenders. Basically dominated the region the entirety of last year. He has been with them every step of the way and won those titles very convincingly. I think this is a good main tank pickup for the London Spitfire. The thing is, can it equal Jester? I don't think anyone can say it can equal Jester, but it might equal Jester if we give it time. This is definitely a roster that is going to have to be given time, I think. But it's also a roster that will, I think, run into this season and either be a massive surprise or be a disappointment initially and then perhaps develop. It'll be interesting to see how it works. But moving on after that, and we have Hailey. Hailey, you'll know as a support player from Seoul Dynasty. Hailey is the only player that London had picked up with previous Overwatch League experience. Hailey didn't really feature all that much for the Seoul Dynasty from what I remember. But again, he does have that crucial bit of experience that I think will be invaluable to the players that don't have the experience in the league. And there are some players in this London lineup now that have very, very minimal experience. Very minimal experience. So, yes, it's very interesting to see where London go with this. Highly, I would imagine, will be one of the starting supports for the London Spitfire going into 2020. But staying with the supports and staying and talking about inexperience, we have Sanguinar. Now, Sanguinar, no one knew who Sanguinar was until you signed for London Spitfire. So, Sanguinar comes from a team of a team. So, Seoul Dynasty have a academy team called Gen G in Contenders Korea. Gen G have academy teams of their own. Sanguinar comes from an academy team of Gen G called Gen B. Now, there's very minimal footage of Sanguinar. Actually, it's very, very limited to try and find anything on Sanguinar. But he is a Lucio Mercy BAP player. He's only 18. This is definitely much like a Krillin sort of signing that London Spitfire picked up last season. Definitely a development, but they have seen something. They must have seen something to pick him out of the wilderness in Korea, basically. The depths of Gen G. So, yeah. A very interesting signing, and I really can't say anything on him because we don't know enough. But, yes. Interesting. So then we kind of move on to a lot of the signings that came in not so long ago, and these are much more unknown signings. So the first one is Babel. Babel is a hit scan DPS player. He's only 18 and he comes from BM Hawk. BM Hawk is a tier 3 team in South Korea. Done very well in things like the Zotac Cup. Has taken part in Open Division. They came fourth in Open Division of 2019 Season 2 in Korea, losing out to X6 Gaming. But they did win Season 1 of Open Division in Korea in 2019. So, yeah, this is London Spitfire scouting doing its work, definitely. Yeah, delving deep into South Korea to try and find these players. Again, I can't tell you much because we don't know. We just don't know. So we're going to rattle through these things. So Although is the next one. Although is another DPS player. I don't even know what Although plays. I don't know whether he is a hit scan or a projectile specialist. I don't even know what age he is. But he's young because all of these Spitfire players are. He comes, again, from an academy team of Gen G, which is the academy team of Seoul Dynasty. He comes from Gen S, though. So, yeah, definitely, Spitfire are definitely looking and trawling through what's been going on in Korea. They've been obviously watching things like the Overwatch Korea Cup and things like that, and finding these players out of nowhere. Now, these players like Babel and Although and the next two coming up, I'm not expecting them to start for the Spitfire. I think the players we were talking about earlier, the likes of Banar, Fuse, Shui, JMac, Hailey, and Galista coming up a little bit later, I think they will be your starting players. But this is the squad depth for London, and it looks very interesting, and I don't know where to put it. It's very, very interesting what London Spitfire are doing. So, Although is another DPS player for the Spitfire. Then we have Jihyun. Jihyun is an interesting one. He's a main tank. He comes from Bubble Burster Gaming, who played in Contenders China Season 2. They weren't a massive team. They didn't do massively well. But I said that we don't really know too much about JMax Hammond. Well, we do know about Hammond from Jihyun. Jihyun is a good Hammond player. He's also a good Orisa player. So I'm assuming London Spitfire have gone down the route of having a Wrecking Ball Hammond specialist. And Jihyun could be that player. And I do know something Taimu said about the current patch. If your off-tank can't play Hammond, you're going to struggle. So maybe this is what London Spitfire are looking at. Perhaps they will play Jihyun as an off-tank on the Wrecking Ball, as a specialist on that hero, alongside perhaps JMac. Who knows? But this is another interesting signing and a more lower level signing for the London Spitfire, but not as lower level as like Sanguinar, Babel and Although are. We at least know some information about Jihyun. And then we have Celestin. Celestin we do actually know a bit about. So he's an off-tank player, well known for his D.Va and Zarya, and he comes from Team Griffin. Now, Team Griffin had a decent time event in Contenders Season 2 trials in Korea, but they didn't do anything massively outstanding. But one thing with Celestin is he does have experience with the likes of Team Hondu Pantera. Team Condor Banthera back in 2018. So he has the experience of going up against teams like Runaway, like Element Mystique, like O2, and Gen G. So he does have much more experience than perhaps the other more unknown signings like Sanguinar Babylon or Voodoo. But again, nothing massively blockbuster for London Spitfire here. And then we have the last player we're going to talk about, and this is Glister. Glister is well known. Now, Glister is currently not actually available for London because he doesn't actually turn 18 until January the 26th. So he will be available when the league starts. But he is very young. He's come from Gen G. So this is the main Gen G roster, the roster that competes in Contenders Korea and does very well generally in Contenders Korea. Glister is a well-known name in Korea. He is definitely the marquee signing out of the lot, I would say. Shui is just a little bit below that. He is a very interesting player because he can play the Doomfist, he can play the Widowmaker, he can play the Hanzo, and he can play the Reaper. So he's got kind of that mix of hit scan and projectile. I would be almost certain that Glister is kind of the perhaps replacement. Is Glister a replacement for Birdring or Prophet? When you look at Shui, you would imagine Shui would be the replacement for Prophet, so Glister would be the replacement for Birdring. But Glister is a bit more versatile than Birdring ever was. Birdring was very much hit scan based, whereas Glister has got a more versatile hero pool than Birdring. So perhaps he's more of a Prophet replacement. But Glister is definitely a very good player. He also had time at Exits Gaming in 7. He's got a lot of experience behind him in Contenders Korea, and I think that will be invaluable to this London Spitfire roster. So, that gets us through all of those London players. Where do we think this London team lies? I really, really don't know. I am extremely surprised that they went so extreme with the changes to their roster. It's a very big gamble, and it will be boom or bust this season to see what London do. I'm very interested to see what people do in their power rankings for London, because I think a lot of people perhaps even might have them quite low. The question is, can they exceed that? And I think they can. And the reason I say that is because this roster, and someone said this to me the other day and I actually kind of agreed, London's roster last season had a lot of pressure on it to live up to the expectation after being really, really good in the inaugural season. And they didn't live up to it. This new roster has completely removed all expectation from London and kind of turned them into underdogs. And I think London liked being underdogs. So I think this London roster could surprise or it could fail. But if it fails in the short term, London fans, I think, need to be patient because I think it could succeed in the long term. It just needs to be given time. But London are going to be a very interesting team to look at coming into the season because we really don't know what they're going to do. We really, really don't know. But talking to the season, they will be one of the teams to start us off in week 1. They will travel to New York to take on the Excelsior, so talk about dropping them in at the deep end, and then take on the Paris Eternal and the Battle for Europe. I know it's an all-Korean roster in the Battle for Europe, but it's London versus Paris. It's the Battle for Europe. Just bear with me here. And then they'll be in action in week 3 against the Washington Justice, and then in week 4 against Houston Outlaws and Florida Mayhem. Now, if we were looking at London Spitfire from last season, or the inaugural season, we'd be saying, well, really, they should go 4-1 in their first 5 games. But this is a new London roster. And so we really can't predict. I would be almost certain that London will lose to New York, I would have thought, because I don't think the team will be on a level to beat New York. But the other teams, we really don't know. We really, really don't know. Florida could beat London, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised. But that's going to be it for London Spitfire. Very interesting team, and I know it's been a long one, but there's a lot to talk about with London. This will probably be the longest roundup of them all. Yeah, no idea where this London team is going to fall come the start of the season, and the end of the season even, but who knows. But after this, we move on to LA, because we've got the Gladiators up next and then the Valiant after that. 2 different ends of the poll. Gladiators, very consistent team. Valiant right now, oh dear. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.